So the next thing we're going to evaluate on the palate of our wine is the amount of tannin. White wines, as a rule, tend not to have any tannin at all, or very low tannin, almost imperceptible tannin. The only exception would be certain dark grape varieties, such as Pinot Gris or Gewürztraminer, and you'll learn about all of these, of course, in the sessions ahead, that can have almost the depth of color in the grape skins that some light reds do. And if, depending on the winemaker and how they've been treated, it's possible that a little bit of the tannin can in fact leach into the wine, and you get a very, very subtle impact of tannin. The only other exception would be tannins that are derived from oak barrels, and so in the case of Chardonnay you may get very, very low levels, below threshold in most cases, of tannin. So let's assume most whites in this class are going to be low to no tannin. Reds is where the tannins come in, and that's going to be a low tannin, medium tannin, a high tannin evaluation, depending on how drying the wine feels in your mouth, or how, and that's what we call astringency, or how, if there's any bitterness from those tannins, and that you'll feel that at the back of your tongue. Almost one of the last things that you feel in the tasting process is this bitterness that might be at the back of your tongue, sort of like an aspirin that sat on the back of your tongue too long before you swallowed it. Okay, these would be the analysis of tannin. Certain grape varieties are known for having very strong, firm tannins, high levels of tannin. Things like Barolo from the Nebbiolo grape, or certain Cabernet Sauvignons from France may be very tannic. Again, you can expect that in some of the wines you'll taste in this class, you will encounter high tannin wines and everything in between. So we've assessed sweetness, acidity, tannin. The next thing we want to evaluate is the body of the wine and the alcohol. Now, these do often go hand in hand. If the wine tends to have high alcohol or high levels of residual sugar, then it probably has a fuller body. But there are other elements that can give the wine weight in our mouths. When you're trying to make sense of body, think about milk products. A light-bodied wine would be like a skim milk. A medium-bodied wine would be like a homogenized milk, and a full-bodied wine would be like table cream. If you imagine the feeling of those different dairy products in your mouth, you understand that they can be thicker or thinner, heavier and denser or lighter. All right? That's the way we want to think about the wines. Finally, we're going to talk about, well, two final things. The length of the wine. Length is a measurement of how long the flavor lingers in our mouths after we've swallowed or spat the wine. And it's measured in seconds. Sometimes it seems to disappear, the flavor disappears immediately, in which case it would have a short finish. Sometimes it lingers around for 5, 6, 10, 12 seconds, in which case it has a medium length. And sometimes the flavor just doesn't seem to want to go away. We taste the wine, and we spit out the wine, and the flavor is there and there and there. Even 20 or 30 seconds later, we get those residual flavors of fruit or oak or minerality, whatever it was that we were tasting in the wine. That would be a wine with a long finish, and certainly that is one of the signs that this could be a high quality wine. If it has that kind of complexity and that kind of length, it may be considered a wine with a lot of quality. Like we did in the nose, we have to assess the flavor characteristics of the wine. What does it taste of? Often you will get a lot of the same tastes that you smelled. This is what we call a sort of aroma replays. So if I smell something that reminds me of oak character, it's quite possible I'm going to taste something that reminds me of oak character, whether it's a spiciness or a toastiness or a vanillin flavor. The same goes for fruit and for earthy tones and spice tones and the whole range, frankly, of aromas that we have in wines. So you will want to make an assessment of the flavor characteristics. Are they the same as what we smelled, or are they different, and what are they? Get as specific as you can, just as we did in the nose of the wine. The final stage of our tasting note is to take all of those notes we've just made and to gather them together and to come to some sort of conclusion. And at this level, there's two things that we want to be thinking about. What is the overall quality statement that the wine has made? First of all, was it healthy? Did it have pronounced aromas? Did it have lots of flavor? Did it have a long finish? Was it balanced in our mouths? Were all the flavors and aromas sort of in check? Or at least do we anticipate them becoming nicely balanced with adequate age if the wine that you feel requires aging. And really just how much did the wine impress us? Was it a wine that had a lot of great varietal character, regional character, a lot of complexity? And if it did, and our tasting notes suggest that, then this might be a wine of very high quality. The other thing we want to evaluate, at the very least, is the maturity of the wine. Is this a young wine? Is this a wine that is meant to drink now? Is this a wine that will benefit from short, medium, or long-term cellaring? This is obviously a very important aspect to the tasting note as well. It will help us to determine just how long we want to hold on to these wines before we feel that they're going to be showing their very best. There are some other things that you can evaluate when you're coming to these conclusions after your tasting note. Things like what wine and food matches might you consider with a wine like this? What sort of price point do you anticipate this wine should be at? You might know already what the price is, but if you're blind tasting the wine, that is to say you don't know anything about the wine, then you might want to guess what the price range could be. Is it a low-priced wine? Is it a medium-priced wine? Is it an expensive wine? Or is it a super premium priced wine based on the assessment of quality that you ascertained from the tasting note? This is pretty much the tasting note. This is what we're going to do. Those 4 sections, the more detailed we get, the more useful that tasting note is. And obviously the very first wines that we taste in this course are going to be a little more difficult to evaluate than the ones that we assess later on when we start to get used to the process and a little better at doing this. Our nose is going to develop sensitivities, our palate will develop sensitivities. The more we use our nose, the more we use our palate, the better at this we will get. So I certainly encourage you to taste as many wines as you can, write tasting notes all the time, really make this a sort of everyday process, and you'll get really good at making tasting notes if you follow these instructions.